on the morning of June the 6th.
In my case, as far as I can remember, we were deplaned about 12:50, 10 minutes to 1 in the morning.
I was in the medical section of the battalion, so I was in headquarters company, and I'm not quite sure, but I think we left around midnight, our particular plane.
My company and my situation where we went in these Albemarle bombers and only 10 men could go in each aircraft. The first 120 in our company went over in the Albemarle bombers. All the rest came out of the Dakotas, the American C-47, which 20 men sticks, and they could go out the door, which was faster.
There wasn't very much talk, to be truthful. Everyone was apprehensive and nervous, of course, and there wasn't a lot of chatter going on, no.
This picture changed when we neared the coast, and we could see flashes of light through the porthole.
Once we reached the coastline, there was some MAC fire, and the aircraft did take evasive action. Possibly this accounts for why we were so wide scattered.
Some that went straight into the target, to the drop zone, at least they got onto the field. Others who got the evasive action, the pilots lost where they were supposed to be, and when they saw a field that they thought looked familiar, they just put on the green light and everybody go out.
None of us hit the actual drop zone.
But the aircraft, the pilot was weaving all over the place, and we were rolling around inside and cursing because he wasn't flying in a straight path. And anyway, the red light came on, and so the guys that were closest to the hole unhooked the door, raised them up and hooked them on the sides of the aircraft so the hole was ready. After the first 4 men went out, and they went out, they were going zip when the green light went on. I don't know whether it was the next man who was a Bren gunner or what, but somebody said the door is flopped, and he got jammed in half of the hole. They struggled, and finally he disappeared, and they hooked the door back up, and the rest of us went out. But what had happened at the time that elapsed, the last of us were dropped way the heck off where we were supposed to be. Nobody believes that one stick landed close to where the troops were going to come up on the beach later on. And one was at an airfield at La Havre, that's almost 40 miles between.
In my case, it was just fields. That's all I seen were fields. There was no fire actually at all in the area where I was.
And then the Germans had flooded the area around the Dives River. Those who landed in the fields that were flooded, there was only 3 feet of water, they survived. Those who landed in a ditch, that would be 6, 7 feet deep with their loads, we lost a few men who happened to land in those ditches, in the water over those ditches. They just went straight down to the bottom and never got up again.
The area that I dropped into, it was only about 4.5 feet of water, so I survived.
I landed by myself, probably about 3 miles from the drop zone towards Caen.
When I was looking for the ground, I remember it was black as the ace of spades, and I couldn't see the ground at all. It's got to be close here. I better get ready. But before just thinking that, I hit the ground. Caught me by surprise.
I got out of my parachute, left it there, and looked around, and I saw some trees off to the east a bit, and walked towards these trees because I figured that the trees would be on the edge of the road.
Well, first I tried to locate where the hell I was, and which was very difficult because it's just farmland, and there wasn't anything to go by.
I had no idea which direction to go, but I saw the aircraft, heard the aircraft still flying over. So I thought, well, they're coming from the coast, so I walked in that direction. That turned out to be the right decision.
In the early hours of D-Day, Canadian paratroopers faced confusion and tried to find their way to their targets.
Besides all our equipment, When I say equipment, that is rifle and bullets and gammon bombs and grenades. Each one of us had a vest which held 12 sticks of PHE, plastic high explosive. You had to collect up enough of these chaps with their vest of plastic high explosives in order to demolish the bridge. And I got to the bridge about 10 after 1, quarter after 1, and we waited, and there was other lads come in with their load of PHE, and Captain Peter Griffin was there. That's our B Company second in command.
Actually, after about a half an hour, I heard some small arms fire, and I headed in that direction, figuring that we were the only ones in there, so it had to be some of our people who were involved in the firefight or whatever it was.
I actually was sitting beside the doctor because the medical section in headquarters company, which consisted of 4 of us. As we approached the drop zone, of course, there was an announcement to stand up. I happened to be number 19 in the plane. There was 20, and another part of our medical section was number 20. When I reached the door, they stopped me from going out because they had gone over the drop zone. So the 2 of us, 19 and 20, we sat down again, and of course, immediately we thought, well, this is a complete letdown. We're going to go back to England, but they didn't. He came around again, and the 2 of us went out. It turned out to be very fortunate for me because the first 18 landed were either captured or killed or missing or wounded. And of course, unfortunately, the medical section of our battalion was just decimated.
Midway across the English Channel, the flotilla of ships battled the heavy seas and harsh weather.
We were en route all night in the boats. Because it all had to be done in one line. If some unit was getting behind on the boats, they wouldn't be there to have a full lineup on the beach going in.
One of the key targets of the paratroopers was the Merville Battery. It had to be neutralized before the landing, or the large guns would wreak havoc on the beaches.
Out of the 600 men that are trained to do that, only 180 some odd men actually were put in the attack and carried it out successfully. When the Merville batteries were taken out and they had damaged the guns so they couldn't fire, then they were to move to a pre-planned defense line. A company was to follow those men from the 9th Battalion that were left. Now, there weren't a lot of men. There were only about 60, I think, left of the 180 some odd men.
I'm pleased, looking back, that I and my crew were part of the D-Day operation. We flew into the gun emplacement north of Juno Beach at Houlgate. It
was really a confusing situation. I don't think they ever imagined that by dropping at night that they would have so much confusion.
I went for, possibly an hour. I met up with 2 British airborne troops, and they were pushing a 6-pound anti-tank gun. They had landed in a glider that was totally wrecked. The Jeep was totally wrecked, but they managed to get the gun out. And the 2 of them were hand-pushing this thing by themselves, so I gave them a hand.
It's kind of a vague because you just sort of walk, you hear noises, and you go to ground, and nothing, and then you get up and go again. And I
saw these shadowy figures in the distance, but I I avoided them, whether they were our people or the Germans. It was still quite dark at night.
We heard then from the guys who had actually carried out all the objectives that we had to do, blowing the bridge, taking out the German strong point, making sure there was no Germans around the drop zone for the rest of the troops to come in. All those jobs were carried out by 35 men that landed on the field and headed to the rendezvous. They knocked out the machine gunners, and the snipers actually must have hit the officer in charge of the bunker, because it was around noontime when the Germans came and sent out a guy with a white flag. About 40 men in the bunker came up with their hands up. And they were quite peeved when they realized there was only about 20 Canadians around them. That must have been funny.
By about 3 o'clock, there was 18 of us there, and Captain Griffin says, "Does anybody know anything about